Coming up on Broncos Weekend. On the brink of mandatory minicamp, we're discussing what we've learned about this Broncos offense throughout the first 3 weeks of OTAs and breaking down the biggest storylines surrounding each offensive position group as training camp grows near. Broncos Weekend is next. Welcome inside the Pat Bowlen Fieldhouse for the latest edition of Broncos Weekend, everyone. I'm Alexis Perry, joined by the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. And of course, the man you all love to hate or hate to love, depending on who you are, KOA's Benjamin Allbright. You guys, the Denver Broncos wrapped up Phase 3 of voluntary OTAs and will shift their attention to mandatory minicamp, which gets underway on Monday. While this is the final phase of the offseason program, the focus is still on learning rather than on competition. Tim Patrick explained to the media last week what he expects this offense to look like when they return for training camp at the end of July in comparison to where they're at right now.
It's going to be cleaner, more detailed. Right now, we're just out there running the plays. We just need to hone in on the little things, but you can't do that if we don't even know the plays yet. So we're just out there running the plays right now. But the more we meet, the more we're with each other, the more we're meeting and talking, what he likes, what we like. It just hones in the whole offense and we run it to perfection.
Well, it is an endless pursuit of perfection for the Denver Broncos, and these receivers know that there are no more excuses with Russell Wilson as their signal caller. You guys, starting with one of the more underrated wide receiver duos in the league, Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick, what are some of the most noticeable ways that you've seen these guys grow throughout this offseason, Ben?
Well, I think there's an excitement about what they're doing. I think these guys are having fun playing football again, and I think it's a big part of it. We've seen Courtland kind of come back from that injury, and last year it was kind of a slow comeback from that. He looks like he's finally back to 100%. Tim Patrick looked amped and excited and ready to get out there and play football. So I think these guys complement each other. Courtland's going to be a guy that can factor heavily as a reliable target, and Tim can be a third down weapon, and hopefully Jeudy can help take the top off out of the slot.
Yeah, and I think that they realize the seriousness of the situation. It's a special moment in hand when you have so many weapons on the offensive side of the ball, including a great quarterback, and you got a great defense. I think they know how special this time is. They know the urgency of it, and they're still putting in the work. They're still putting in that A+ effort. And I think that also with Russell Wilson being in the building, seeing the way he trains, how he takes care of his body, I think they're all putting that in the back of their minds, like, man, I need to do this or something similar to this to make sure that I have a good long career, the same as Russell Wilson.
Well, Ben kind of hinted at this. How do you see these guys complementing each other, Steve? And how does that really add some more versatility for this offense in comparison to years past? Well,
they complement each other extremely well. They're really two similar types of receivers. They're both tall, big, strong, and fast. They play extremely hard. They'll go in, they'll block, they'll do everything you want them to do, and they make big catches in clutch situations. So I think they complement each other extremely well, and I'm looking forward to some big things from them.
Go back and look at the tape over Russell Wilson's career. Where does he usually throw the ball? Outside the numbers. And what better to have than two big body guys that can box out with the body and create an area where the quarterback can throw the football that only the receiver can get it. So I think these are the two of the best weapons that Russell Wilson has ever had, at least in terms of what his game is. And then, having the additional other types of receivers that the Broncos has, guys like KJ and Jerry, I think that only adds to the mix.
Well, we all know where Jeudy was drafted there in 2020, and we know the production that this team has gotten out of him. Not nearly enough. There's no doubt he needs to have a breakout season here in 2022, but from what you guys have seen out there during OTAs, do you guys think this could be his year?
Yeah, really going to want to get that fake jet sweep. No, I'm just kidding. Jerry's got to get out there and be the guy. He's got to go out there and be the guy they drafted in the first round. He's got to be the guy that can go out there and dominate top corners in this league and prove that he can be that kind of receiver. In his rookie season, we had Xavier Howard, one of the best corners in the league. Miami Dolphins say that he was one of the best route runners he's ever seen. Well, now you need to transition being a great route runner into being a great wide receiver. All that potential's got to turn into something. It's year 3. It's typically the breakout year for wide receivers that are young. So we need to see it out of Jerry this year.
Yeah, Jerry, he's had to battle the injuries, had a few drops, and I think for him more than anything, just knowing that he's still that same player he was when he came out of Alabama. And if he's healthy and he's on the field, he's going to make plays. This coaching staff, this quarterback, they're going to make sure he gets plenty of targets.
Yeah, I think the key for him this year is definitely staying healthy. With so much attention on Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, which other pass catchers could you guys see Coach Hackett using as some mismatches there on the field?
Well, you get the tight ends. You got both the tight ends in Albert O and Greg Dulcich that figure to factor in. If you go back and look at a Nate Hackett offense, one where he called the plays, the tight end did get some good looks. But KJ Hamler, you got to be the guy that can take the top off. You don't have to have volume catches. You don't have to be a guy that's getting 80 balls a year, but you do have to be the guy that's getting 30 balls a year and is coming down with a large chunk of those, especially with Russell Wilson on the scramble drill. Anytime the play breaks down, you got to be able to use that speed to get deep, get open. Same way Tyler Lockett used to do it in Seattle for Russ. You got to be that deep weapon that's headed for the post or headed for the corner. Russ knows he can rely on you and get you the football.
Yeah, it's a lot similar to the way the Kansas City Chiefs were operating when Patrick Mahomes would start scrambling. Those guys look to go deep, and I'm thinking that's going to be a big part of this offense this year. And I agree with you. I think KJ Hamler is going to be that guy, possibly Montreal Washington.
I got it.
Super speedy guy. And again, the tight ends, like you said, Dulcich and Albert Okwuegbunam, playing a vital part of the pass game as well.
So is it safe to say that you guys feel Montreal Washington's that guy? Say if KJ Hamler, for whatever reason, isn't ready to go 100% for training camp or even the first week of the season, Montreal Washington is going to be that guy who's going to be the take your top off the defense guy.
They hope he grows into that. I don't know if he'll be that right away. I mean, you're coming out of Samford, lower level competition, but he's certainly shown he can step up in big moments. You go back and watch the tape against Florida, and this is a guy that absolutely dominated an SEC defense when he was the only weapon on that offense. They were doubling and tripling him, still had no answer. I think he's going to start the season as a return guy, and they hope that he grows into kind of that complementary receiver as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the things about him is he does have that 40 speed. He's run sub 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, and I think that's a part of a guy who can take the top off is to have a super fast 40 time and also be able to make the catches when the quarterback throws the ball to you.
If it's not Montreal, who is it?
Honestly, the running backs. That may sound silly, but running backs catch a lot of balls in Nate Hackett offenses. You go back and you look at Ahmad Dixon, you go back and look at Fred Jackson, C.J. Spiller. These guys had all caught balls when in Buffalo. Leonard Fournette, T.J. Yeldon caught a lot of balls in Jacksonville. Running backs catch balls in the Nate Hackett offense, and you got to have the hands to be able to take that and then turn the corner and make a big play out of it.
We've talked a lot about Albert O and Greg Dulcich on this show, pretty much ad nauseum, right, Steve? Seriously. Ben, I would love to get your thoughts, though, on how you think these tight ends really factor into this Nate Hackett offense.
Well, you've got to be a willing blocker. You don't have to be the best blocker on the planet, but you've got to be a willing blocker. They want to come out at times in two tight end sets, come out balanced, that ace, that 12 personnel. You're going to want to come out balanced like that, and you've got to be able to be a threat at both. You've got to be able to block and be a threat in the receiving game. Greg Dulcich has a knack for finding the soft spot in zones. You go back and watch UCLA tape with Chip Kelly. He had a knack for finding the soft spot in that. He needs to carry that forward into the NFL. He's not going to be the most polished guy as a rookie. He's not going to be the most polished blocker, but he's got to carry that forward. Alberto, got to show consistency. Got to show he can stay healthy. He's never been the guy for this Denver Broncos team. They always had Noah Fant, and as a complimentary option, he looked good. But now he's going to be the primary guy. He's going to be tight end one. He's going to have to show out, earn that, and be consistent at that, and show that he's reliable.
I think both of these guys can be weapons as receivers. But the question is going to be, will they be able to step in and block, especially considering the pass rushers that we have in the AFC West. Those guys are going to have to be able to block and be effective if they're going to be in the field, especially if you can have two tight ends on the field at the same time. They're going to have to hold their own in the blocking game.
And they're going to have to accelerate their learning process, too, because you're going to have to do a lot of scrape and release against these linebackers that are going to be coming off the edge. So you're going to have to be advanced as a tight end quicker than you probably normally would.
Do you think Russell Wilson can help kind of microwave their development?
Well, you hope. I mean, you go back and you look at Russ and what he did in Seattle. He wasn't a big volume thrower to the tight ends, but when he did, it was big moments. Guys like Will Dissly and Luke Wilson, I think we could all remember their names. They caught touchdown balls. They weren't big volume, 80 catch a year guys, but they were guys that could catch touchdowns when they needed them, and they're going to have to be those guys.
Well, a couple of other guys that we can expect to catch some passes this year, Ben mentioned them, Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. More on the Broncos' big threat out of the backfield coming up after the break.
The greatest achievement for me would be my football career.
One man anchored the greatest defense Denver has ever seen.
Randy was a playmaker. Randy was very smart.
Hear his story.
I believe I was blessed with an athletic ability.
Experience his career.
That guy's absolutely a Hall of Famer.
It's a travesty that he's not in. It just is.
Randy Gradishar, the heart and soul of the Orange Crush. Only on Denver 7.
Welcome Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everyone. Alexis Perry here alongside Steve Atwater and Benjamin Allbright. Guys, with a new offensive system being implemented this offseason, it is safe to say that we can look at recent Packers history to get a taste of what this Broncos offense might look like in 2022. What do we know about Coach Hackett and how he utilizes running backs that could give us some inclination of the workload that we're going to see Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon have this season? Steve?
Well, I don't know if we can get a great grasp on it because in 2021, both the running backs that they used with the Green Bay Packers both had similar numbers in terms of number of carries and also in the production. But in 2020, one running back had significantly more carries, more of a bell cow type system. So I'm anxious to see. I would imagine it'll be more 50-50, closer to 50-50, 60-40 with Javonte Williams having a majority of the carries if he's healthy, that is.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You can go back and look at the history of Nathan Hackett as a play caller. You know, go back and look at Jacksonville, go back and look at Buffalo. You got guys like Fred Jackson, and we talked about Boobie Dixon, C.J. Spiller. They had roughly 50-50 splits with those guys. You go down to Jacksonville. They draft Leonard Fournette in the first round. They still have a near 50-50 split with T.J. Yeldon, and these guys catch the ball a lot out of the backfield. So you're probably going to see a similar split in terms of that. I suggest that you probably see Melvin Gordon in more of a situational role than he was last year, but I still think the number of carries is going to be fairly similar.
Kind of to expand on that, you know, after seeing these guys together in 2021, what skill sets do these guys bring, and how do you see Coach Hackett exploiting those this year?
Well, he likes guys that are powerful and can break tackles. And the running backs I just mentioned, Yeldon, Jackson, Fournette, those are all big, powerful guys. They're not necessarily the scat back type, but they have good hands and catch out of the backfield. And like I said, he likes to throw the ball out of the backfield. Loves the screen game. Loves to try to get those safeties in there and bait them with the screen game. So you got to be able to, you got to be powerful, be able to run between the tackles. You got to be able to have good vision, find the hole when you need it, and you got to be able to have good hands and be able to pass block when they're needed as well.
Yeah, all the traits that I was going to say. Yeah, they first off, great pass blockers. I think both of those guys do an excellent job of protecting Russell Wilson and protecting the offense when they need to. Great vision. I would say Melvin Gordon is more of a long strider. He has the speed, you know, going through the line of scrimmage, and once he gets through the line of scrimmage to outrun you. I don't know if he has the quickness as much as Javonte Williams does. Javonte, he's in the hole. He has the quickness to make guys move. He can run you over, and he can run away from you.
Javonte Williams, he could carry an entire Ravens defense, though, right?
Exactly.
We're looking forward to seeing that. I know it's really easy to keep the focus on Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, but what about Mike Boone? Can this guy carve out some role for himself during training camp this year?
Oh, I think so. You go back and look at, again, Hackett as an OC with some of those players where he was making the decisions, and they did have third running backs in there. With Jacksonville, it was Carlos Hyde. Up in Buffalo originally with C.J. Spiller, and then, an assortment of other backs. So they do find a kind of a 10% carry ratio for that third running back. Usually was a scat back type guy, and they'll find ways to get him the ball, whether that's on a jet sweep, whether it's in the pass game, splitting them out or moving them around, however they do. They did like to run with two running backs out of the shotgun. They like to go gun two back at times, and so you could see that where you're getting a Mike Boone on the field with a Melvin Gordon, or maybe even a Melvin and Javonte package at the same time. So that kind of has me excited.
Yeah, it's extremely important that you have a third back that can come in, because if one of either Javonte or Melvin Gordon, they get nicked up, you're going to need another guy that can come in there and relieve the other guy. So, he can certainly carve out a niche. He's going to have to make sure he knows the offense like everyone else does, and he goes out and tries to dominate here in training camp, though.
Well, following up what I mentioned at the end of the first segment, all of these guys are great pass catchers out of the backfield, but who do you think is the biggest passing game threat, and do you think that's the same guy that has the greatest big play ability?
I think Melvin Gordon's the better pass catcher, natural pass catcher out of the backfield. He did it a lot with Phillip Rivers there and with the Chargers. He did it last year. I think Javonte is a good pass catcher. I don't think he's quite as advanced as Melvin Gordon. As far as a big play threat, Steve just talked about it. Melvin's a big long strider. You let him get by you. It's one-on-one. He's going to win the foot race. Javonte can turn small plays into big plays. So I think Melvin's probably the better situational runner and pass catcher. I think Javonte's probably the better overall running back, if that makes any sense.
Did you take your answer?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
I plagiarized off your notes, Steve.
It's all good. It's all good. Melvin Gordon, great hands. He's shown that throughout his career when he was with the Chargers. Same thing here. He had a 70-yard run last year, so his speed isn't gone, so he can make the big plays from anywhere on the field. Just a matter of getting him the ball.
Well, even during mandatory minicamp, no pads, no full contact, no tackling drills. We all know that. Obviously, all that will change here during training camp. So how can these guys really separate themselves once the pads come on?
Well, just by doing the things that we've seen them do. And I think for Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, they've already proven what they can do. They have a history that precedes them. So we know going into the season they're reliable, they can catch the ball, they run hard, they're going to be where they need to be. So I don't think they really have to prove anything. And I almost feel like right now it's already been decided who's going to be the starter. So I don't even think that's going to be a big deal once we get to camp.
Who's going to be the starter, Steve?
I think Javonte Williams, the way everything is going, now obviously something can happen to where that changes, but I think the way it's set up right now, Javonte Williams is our number 1 running back, Melvin Gordon number 2, and obviously he'll play quite a bit, but that's just how it is right now.
I think you're going to see the 1A, 1B PR game, but I think that Javonte will get the lion's share and ultimately be the one running back. I think what Melvin will be a specialist, situational running back. He was significantly better in short yardage situations than Javonte was last year. He's a little bit better pass blocker, and he's a better receiver out of the backfield. So you got 3rd and long, you're probably bringing Melvin in. You need a pass, probably bringing Melvin in. 3rd and short, you're probably bringing Melvin in. Between the 20s, it's probably the Javonte Williams show. You get down the goal line, it's probably Melvin, but between the 20s, it's probably the Javonte Williams show. So if you're a fantasy footballer, I would say Javonte's probably your yardage back, Melvin's probably your touchdown guy.
And don't get it twisted, though, because Melvin Gordon still is a starting running back, one of the greatest running backs in the league right now.
Yep.
It's just the situation we're in. Javonte is a great running back as well. And I think just based off last season, Javonte is going to get that call first.
All right, you heard it here. Don't get it twisted. Still to come on Broncos Weekend. Games are won and lost in the trenches. We will discuss some of the biggest position battles along the offensive line coming up after the break.
He's the biggest prankster I ever run into in my life.
Sometimes you felt like the butt of the jokes.
He would unscrew the shower head,
spray an icy hot product into the undergarment.
You start feeling this heat.
I certainly said, no, that wasn't me. I didn't do that.
Grabbed the snake real quick, held it up in his face, and I go, the prank's over?
Pretty special time for me.
Randy Gradishar, the heart and soul of the Orange Crush. Only on Denver 7.
Welcome back for this final segment of Broncos Weekend, everyone. We could not do an offensive position group preview without discussing the guys up front. You guys, the Broncos, they added some veteran depth across the O-line, of course, with Billy Turner, Tom Compton, and Ben Braden. Why was it so critical for the Broncos to pick up guys who have experience specifically in this scheme if they want to end their playoff drought?
Well, I think it's like having coaches on the field, right? I mean, you can only coach guys so much. If you got guys that already understand what the expectation is and what the calls are in the locker room with you, those guys can help out with coaching people up. So I think it's valuable in that regard. Certainly with Ben Braden and Billy Turner, both knowing Nathaniel Hackett personally.
Right.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree with that. And man, with this outside zone type of scheme, it's a scheme that requires guys to be in shape because they're going to be running quite a bit, and they want to wear down that defensive line by trying to cut off their angle. So, I think most guys have played in similar offenses, different types of offense throughout their career. So it's really just a matter of how good you are as an athlete and as a football player, as much, I would say more so than how do you fit this particular scheme?
Right. I think one of the biggest takeaways from OTAs so far has been just how brilliant center Lloyd Cushenberry is. I guess he's just absolutely dominating guys, playing Kahoot there in the meeting room. So how beneficial is it for the Broncos offense, not just the offensive line, but to have a guy like Lloyd Cushenberry who really has such a strong understanding of this system?
Well, I think that's good for him. I think this scheme change is great for him because he was struggling a little bit in the last scheme, and his functional strength was something that got picked on at times. And so I think having a grasp of this system and being a better athletic and body type archetype fit for this scheme is good. The fact that you got intelligence on top of it is just gravy, that you're picking it up. So Lloyd was a guy that was, I don't know, potentially on the chopping block, and now he looks like he's back to being cemented as the starter there at center.
Yeah, no, he's been doing a good job out there, I think, and I think it'll fit him really well because I remember watching him at the Senior Bowl. He was dominant at the Senior Bowl, and I'd like to see him on the run more so than sitting back and trying to catch guys. Yep. So I think this will fit him well. His smarts are great because at the center position, he's like the quarterback before you get to the quarterback. Getting everybody lined up, making sure that the quarterback knows who's where on the defense. So I think that is going to be a battle there. Now, I don't think that they're going to give that position to him. I think Graham Glasgow has been practicing some at the position as well, and that's going to push him, and I think it's going to make the team better, though.
Yeah, how do you see Graham Glasgow really shaking things up, given the fact that he could play any position there, interior?
Well, I mean, having that kind of depth is invaluable. A guy who can play all three positions, and that's just valuable in and of itself. The fact that he's starting caliber at all three and actually had his best season at center with the Detroit Lions is just icing on the cake. He could challenge Lloyd for that job. I mean, he's got the smarts, he's got the strength and everything else. He's just coming in a little bit behind the curve because of the injury and trying to get back in shape. So Lloyd has a step on him at the beginning, and we'll see if Lloyd's able to keep that step going through that competition.
Okay, guys, there is no doubt that we are going to be watching the battle at the right tackle position very closely during training camp. I love a good old, way too early prediction. Who wins the right tackle position?
Man, it's going to be interesting because Tom Compton, I think he had like 573 snaps at right tackle last year. Billy Turner had 810 snaps. And then Calvin Anderson, he only had 172 snaps, and they were at left tackle.
Yep.
So, man, if I had to pick one guy, I'd probably say Billy Turner, just because he's got the experience there. He and Hackett have a great relationship. He understands the system. But I think it's going to be great because each of those guys will be able to play all along the offensive line, and we're going to be better for that.
I'm going to go with Calvin Anderson. I'm going to go with the smart guy. I'm going to go with the Rubik's Cube champ, Calvin Anderson.
He is smart.
I think Billy Turner is the prohibitive favorite right now. I would. He's got the relationship with Hackett, as you mentioned. He knows the scheme. But both Billy Turner and Tom Compton, the best years came at guard, and their best grades came at guard. And I think that's their best position. So you may see something start out like that. I'd love to see Calvin be able to make the switch, get over there. He and Garrett Bowles, bookend tackles. They're buddies. They live together. Yeah. RoboCop 1, RoboCop 2, with all that stuff. But I'd like to see Calvin Anderson do it. I'd like to see the young guy cement the position for years to come rather than plug a Billy Turner in for a couple of years and then trying to find another guy.
I'll just take Tom Compton since he's the only guy that we haven't named. How's that? We'll talk about this at the end of training camp. I know. Can't wait to see week one. Steve, you know what? You practice up against a scheme very similar to this with Coach Shanahan. So what is it about this system that makes it so difficult to defend?
Well, I'll tell you, from the safety position, it was difficult because they line up and they make it look the exact same. All the plays look, they start off the same way. Quarterback coming out, faking the handoff, and or handing the ball off, and then we see the running back running to the outside, and then we got to take off running over there. And then if you go too fast, they're going to cut back on you and beat you that way. But then if you don't go fast enough, it's just a little crease over there, and they can hit you either way. And so as a defense, you got to be extremely disciplined, know the gaps you got to get to, and know what they're doing. And your defensive linemen have to be in great shape because they're going to be running a lot.
What do you like about this system?
Well, I like that it wears defenses out. Steve talked about everything being the same. I like that too. You're never tipping anything away. I think the perfect offense is a zone run scheme that comes out in 12 personnel. You're perfectly balanced. You're never tipping your hand before the start. And it makes defenses that much more difficult to key in on anything. So you have the added advantage. And as an offense, that's what football is, right? Trying to build yourself as many advantages as you can and pick on their weakest player if you can do it. So, I think that this offense does that a little bit better than maybe the previous offense did.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, AP.
All right, well, looking forward to seeing this team continue to grasp the system next week and put their knowledge to the test when they return for training camp at the end of July. That's all the time we have for Broncos Weekend. For Steve Atwater and Benjamin Allbright, and of course, our entire Broncos broadcast crew, thanks so much for watching.